5 years after the surrender of Emperor Kargoth, the galaxy was a very different place. Diplomat Hyojin walked through the halls of the former Zelthari Imperial Palace, now converted into the Galactic Justice Center. The walls that once displayed trophies of conquest now held memorials to victims of the old empire's cruelty. The surrender had been unconditional, but Admiral Kyung-ho had surprised everyone with humanity's response. Instead of enslaving the Zelthari or destroying their worlds, the humans had chosen a different path: transformation. The Zelthari honor codes are hereby abolished, Hyojin had announced on the day after the surrender. No longer will superior strength justify the murder of innocents. No longer will honor be used as an excuse for cruelty. The process of changing an entire civilization was slow and difficult. Governor Yejin oversaw the rehabilitation of former Zelthari worlds, working with local leaders who were willing to embrace new ways of thinking. "We're not here to rule you," she explained to a gathering of Zelthari administrators on the planet Vel. "We're here to teach you that every sentient life has value. The children, regardless of species, deserve protection, not death." Some Zelthari adapted quickly to the new order. They had grown tired of the old ways, the constant focus on warfare and dominance. These aliens worked with human administrators to build schools and hospitals, where once there had been only military bases. Others resisted the changes, clinging to the old belief that might made right. These groups found themselves facing the full weight of human justice. The same species that had shown mercy to those who surrendered showed no tolerance for those who continued to threaten the innocent. On Earth, President Ji-hoon stood before the Memorial to the Innocent, a massive structure built in Geneva to honor all victims of galactic oppression. At its center was a statue of Minho, the 8-year-old boy whose death had changed everything. "We gathered here 5 years ago to mourn a child," the president said to the assembled crowd. "Today, we dedicate this memorial to ensure that no other child will die as Minho did, alone, afraid, and far from home." The memorial was more than just stone and metal. It was a promise carved into the fabric of galactic law. Every treaty, every trade agreement, every diplomatic accord now included the same clause: the deliberate harm of children was a crime against all sentient species. Admiral Ne Young commanded the new galactic patrol fleet, 500,000 ships that had once been instruments of war now serving as guardians of peace. The massive fleet was stationed throughout former Zelthari space, ensuring that the old ways of thinking could never return. Patrol 7 to command came a message from Captain Sojin, commanding a group of cruisers near the Rigel system. "We've received reports of Vegan raiders attacking civilian transports. Requesting permission to intervene." "Permission granted," Nayoung replied immediately. "Protect the civilians and capture the raiders for trial." The human fleet moved with the same efficiency they had shown in war, but now they were protecting instead of destroying. The former Zelthari territory, once a place of fear and oppression, was becoming one of the safest regions in the galaxy. The transformation wasn't limited to military matters. Dr. Hyjin led teams of human scientists and doctors who worked to improve life on former Zelthari worlds. They built hospitals where the aliens had built weapons factories. They established schools where children of all species learned together. "The Zelthari medical knowledge is actually quite advanced," Dr. Hyjin reported during a conference on New Zelthar. "Combined with human techniques, we've been able to extend lifespans and reduce disease across 12 worlds. But perhaps the most important changes were happening in the minds of the galaxy's children. On worlds throughout former Zelthari space, young aliens and humans learned together in classrooms, where the old divisions meant nothing. Teacher Min-Soo worked at a school on Keth Prime, where Zelthari children sat next to human students. The alien children were learning to read stories about cooperation and kindness instead of conquest and domination. "Today we're going to learn about a boy named Minho," Min-Soo told her mixed class of 8-year-olds. "He was just like you, curious about the world, excited to see new places, and looking forward to seeing his family." The children listened carefully as their teacher told them about the boy, whose death had changed the galaxy. But the story didn't end with tragedy. It ended with hope. "Minho's death was very sad," Min-Soo continued. "But something good came from it. People realize that children are the most important thing in the universe. That's why we have laws now that protect all children, no matter what species they are." A young Zelthari girl raised her hand. Teacher, does that mean no one can hurt me for being different? That's exactly what it means, Minsu smiled. You are protected by the strongest fleet in the galaxy, and by people who believe every child deserves to grow up safe and happy. The economic transformation was just as dramatic. Trade Representative Jun Ho worked with former Zelthari merchants to convert their war economy into something productive. Factories that had made weapons now produced medical equipment and farming tools. The profit margins are actually better, explained Velkath, a former Zelthari weapons manufacturer who now built hospital equipment. It turns out there's more money in healing than in hurting. But not everyone in the galaxy approved of humanity's new role. Ambassador Su Young regularly dealt with complaints from other species who thought the humans had gone too far. You've upset the natural order, complained Ambassador Thrix of the Vegan Confederacy during a diplomatic meeting. The Zelthari were useful as a counterbalance to other powers. Now you've made yourselves the dominant force in this sector. We didn't seek dominance, Su Young replied calmly. We sought justice. If protecting children makes us dominant, then so be it. The conversation was interrupted by an aide who brought urgent news. Ambassador, we've received reports from the Outer Rim. The Kalian Empire has attacked a human colony ship. There are children on board? Su Young's expression hardened. Alert Admiral Na Young. Dispatch the nearest patrol groups immediately. Within hours, 50,000 human ships were racing toward the Kalian territory. The message was clear. The death of Minho had taught humanity that some things were worth any sacrifice. On New Busan, the colony world where Minho had been heading when he died, his parents Dongsu and Yunji tended a memorial garden. The blue grass grew in careful patterns around a simple marker bearing their son's name. Do you think he would be proud? Yunji asked her husband as they worked among the alien flowers. Dongsu looked up at the purple sky, where the lights of human patrol ships moved like protective stars. I think he would be happy that other children are safe. The garden had become a pilgrimage site for families from across human space. They came to remember Minho and to understand what his death had accomplished. The boy who had died alone and afraid had become a symbol of hope for children everywhere. In the former imperial capital of SciFiPrime, the old Emperor Kargoth lived quietly in a small apartment, working as a translator for the human administration. He had traded his palace for simple quarters, his power for the chance to help build something better. I used to think strength meant the ability to take what you wanted, he told a group of young Zelthari who were learning about the new galactic order. But the humans taught me that true strength means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The old emperor often visited the memorial plaza, where a statue of Minho stood surrounded by gardens from a dozen worlds. Children of all species played there, watched over by human guards who had once been soldiers. They should have left us alone, Kargoth whispered to the statue, echoing Admiral Velthak's dying words. But I'm glad they didn't. As the years passed, the story of Minho became legend throughout the galaxy. Parents told their children about the human boy whose death had brought justice to the stars. Schools taught lessons about the importance of protecting the innocent. Governments wrote laws based on the principle that every child deserved safety. And in space, 500,000 human ships continued their eternal patrol, guardians watching over a galaxy where no child would ever again die for the crime of being different. The memorial ships bore names like Hope's Guardian, Children's Shield, and Minho's Promise. Each one carried a small photo of an 8-year-old boy who had wanted nothing more than to find his mother. They had found something much more important. They had found a galaxy willing to change. The boy who died alone had become the reason why no child would ever be alone again. Emperor Kargoth of the Zelthari Empire stood in his war room, staring at the tactical display with growing disbelief. The hologram showed space near the Empire's border, where hundreds of thousands of red dots moved steadily toward Zelthari territory. How many ships? He asked his military commander, General Thekmol. Our scouts count approximately 500,000 vessels, Emperor. The humans appear to have mobilized their entire civilization for war. Kargoth's scaled face showed confusion rather than fear. In 1,000 years of Zelthari dominance, no species had ever responded to their authority with such massive force. Usually, a demonstration of power like the incident on the human transport ship would bring immediate submission. This makes no sense, the Emperor said. We killed one inferior creature, one small human. Why would they risk their entire species over such a trivial matter? Admiral Velthak, the commander who had overseen Minho's murder, shifted nervously. Perhaps they are bluffing, Emperor. No species would truly go to war over a single child. 500,000 ships is not a bluff, General Thekmol replied grimly. Our entire fleet numbers 40,000 vessels. We are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. The Emperor studied the display again. Each red dot represented a human warship, and there were so many that they looked like a red cloud moving across space. In all of Zelthari history, no enemy had ever assembled such a force. Send envoys, Kargoth decided. Offer the humans compensation for their loss. Gold technology, territory, whatever they want. Surely they will be reasonable. But the human fleet had no interest in negotiation. Captain Dohyun commanded the heavy cruiser Sol's Vengeance in the first wave of ships to reach Zelthari space. When the aliens sent diplomatic messages, he followed his orders and ignored them completely. Target the border station at Keth 7, Dohyun ordered his weapons officer. All guns, full power. The Zelthari border station was a massive structure designed to intimidate anyone approaching their territory. It mounted heavy weapons and shields that could stop most attacks, but it was built to face a few dozen ships at most, not the coordinated assault of 5,000 human cruisers. The station's shields flared and died under the concentrated firepower. Secondary explosions rippled through its structure as weapons batteries and power systems overloaded. Within minutes, the mighty fortress was nothing but floating debris. Station destroyed, sir, the weapons officer reported. No survivors detected. Good, Dohyun said simply. Move to the next target. The systematic destruction of Zelthari border defenses continued for weeks. Commander Insuk led a task force that eliminated 3 major military bases in a single day. The bases were heavily defended, but the humans simply brought overwhelming force to bear against each target. Concentrate fire on the command center, Insuk ordered as her ships approached the fortress on Vel Prime. I want nothing left but scrap metal. The Zelthari defenders fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. For every human ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The fortress that had protected Vel Prime for 3 centuries died under a storm of human fire. Battle Coordinator Sang Woo had a special assignment. His job was to track down every Zelthari ship and soldier that had been present during Minho's murder. Admiral Velthak's battle group was scattered across 3 star systems, but Sang Woo hunted them methodically. There, he said, pointing to a display showing a Zelthari cruiser trying to hide behind an asteroid. That's the ship that carried the soldier who killed the boy. All units converge on target, he ordered. 50 human cruisers moved toward the asteroid, surrounding the hiding Zelthari vessel. The alien ship tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Human ships blocked every escape route. When the Zelthari captain realized he was trapped, he sent a surrender signal. No prisoners, Sang Woo said coldly. Fire. The concentrated barrage turned the Zelthari cruiser into vapor. Somewhere in that expanding cloud of gas and debris was Kethvar, the soldier who had murdered an 8-year-old boy for accidentally bumping into him. One by one, every ship from Admiral Velthak's original battle group was tracked down and destroyed. The humans showed no mercy to those who had been present at Minho's death. This was not conquest, it was justice. The speed and efficiency of the human advance shocked the Zelthari Empire. World after world fell to the advancing fleet. The aliens' technological advantages meant nothing when faced with such overwhelming numbers. Emperor Kargoth called an emergency meeting of his war council. The holographic display now showed human ships deep inside Zelthari territory, approaching the core worlds of the Empire. We must negotiate, urged Admiral Velthak. Offer them anything they want. Territory, resources, slaves. The humans are not interested in negotiation, General Thekmol interrupted. They have ignored every diplomatic contact. They want total victory. Then we fight to the end, the Emperor declared. Rally all remaining fleets to defend the capital. We are Zelthari. We do not surrender. But even as he spoke, Kargoth knew the war was lost. The humans had brought a force so massive that resistance was meaningless. They were like a force of nature, unstoppable and implacable. The Battle of SciFiPrime lasted 6 hours. The capital world of the Empire was defended by the mightiest fortress ever built, protected by energy shields that could deflect planet-killing weapons. Around it, the Zelthari assembled their remaining fleet, 15,000 of their best ships, crewed by their finest warriors. Admiral Kyung-ho brought 200,000 human, Vessels to the battle. This is for Minho, he announced on all frequencies as the human fleet opened fire. The Zeltari fought with desperate courage, but the outcome was never in doubt. Their shields failed under the massive bombardment. Their ships died by the hundreds, then by the thousands. The mighty fortress that had protected their capital for a millennium cracked and burned under human fire. Admiral Velthak's flagship was among the last to fall. As explosions ripped through his bridge, he finally understood what he had unleashed by allowing a child's murder. "We should have left them alone," he gasped, with his dying breath, Emperor. Kargoth watched the destruction from his palace on the planet below. His empire, built over 1,000 years, was dying in a single day, all because one of his soldiers had killed a human child. "Emperor," his aide said urgently, "the humans are demanding your surrender, unconditional and immediate." Kargoth looked at the burning sky above his capital, where the debris of his fleet rained down like metal snow. He thought of all the worlds his empire controlled, all the species that had bowed before Zelthari power. "Send the surrender," he said quietly. "It's over." The message went out across all frequencies. The Zelthari Empire surrenders unconditionally to the human fleet. "We ask for mercy." On the bridge of Minho's justice, Admiral Kyung-ho received the surrender with grim satisfaction. The war was won, but there was no celebration. Too many people had died because aliens thought human life was worthless. "Send this message to all human ships," he ordered. "The Zelthari Empire has surrendered. Justice for Minho has been served. But we will never forget what happened here. We will never again allow anyone to harm our children." Across the galaxy, other species watched in stunned silence as the mighty Zelthari Empire fell to human wrath. The lesson was clear. Humanity valued their children above everything else, and they would destroy anyone who harmed them. The war that began with the murder of one 8-year-old boy was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy forever. Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho had been in charge of Earth's space navy for 12 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Standing in the command center of Luna Station, he watched as thousands of construction displays showed the same thing: warships being built at impossible speed. Every shipyard from Mercury to Pluto was working at maximum capacity. The massive orbital facilities around Jupiter had stopped building civilian freighters and started producing heavy cruisers. Even the small repair stations near Mars were assembling patrol boats and missile platforms. "Current production numbers," Commander Kyung-ho said to his aide. "Sir, we're completing 200 ships per day across all facilities. The Luna yards alone are finishing 30 Vengeance-class cruisers every 24 hours. 200 ships per day." Kyung-ho had to read the number twice to believe it. In peacetime, Earth built maybe 50 ships per month for exploration and trade. Now they were building more in a single day than they used to build in 4 months. The miracle was how every part of human society had come together for this effort. Factory workers were pulling double shifts without complaint. Engineers who normally competed with each other were sharing designs and improvements. Even children were contributing, collecting scrap metal and organizing recycling drives, all because of one dead boy named Minho. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra approached with her daily report. She looked tired. Everyone did these days, but her eyes were bright with purpose. "Admiral, the conversion of civilian vessels is ahead of schedule. We've turned 300 cargo haulers into missile platforms, and another 100 passenger liners are being fitted with troop transport modifications." "What about the mining ships?" Kyung-ho asked. "Those are the most interesting conversions," Bo-Ra smiled grimly. "Mining ships are built to crack asteroids apart. With some modifications to their equipment, they'll make excellent orbital bombardment vessels." The transformation of humanity's space fleet was only part of the story. Down on Earth, Colonel Jae-sung was overseeing the training of the largest military force in human history. The Marine Training Facility in Australia had expanded to cover an area the size of a small country. Recruits came from every nation, every colony, every walk of life. They were teachers and farmers, students and retirees, all united by the same burning desire for justice. "Today we learn about Zelthari combat tactics," Colonel Jae-sung announced to a group of 5,000 new recruits. Behind him, a holographic display showed the aliens' traditional fighting methods. "The Zelthari believe in honor duels and formal combat. They think war should be glorious and noble. They're wrong. The display changed to show human battle plans. We're not going to fight them fairly. We're going to fight them efficiently. Every recruit carried a photo of Minho in their uniform pocket. The boy's image had become a symbol across human space, a reminder of why they were preparing for war. Not for conquest or resources, but for the simple principle that murdering children was unacceptable. Meanwhile, Intelligence Director Jun Seo was coordinating the most extensive spy operation in human history. Agents who had spent years building peaceful relationships with aliens were now gathering military. Intelligence agent Sumin had been working as a trade representative on the Zelthari border world of HFY for 3 years. The aliens trusted her, considered her a harmless human interested only in business deals. They had no idea she was photographing their military installations and counting their ships. The Zelthari have approximately 40,000 warships across their entire empire, she reported during a secure transmission to Earth. Their largest vessels are impressive, but they're spread thin across dozens of star systems. They've never faced a concentrated assault. Agent Chanwu was stationed on the Zelthari capital world itself, working as a cultural attaché. He attended their military parades and diplomatic ceremonies, all while cataloging their defenses and identifying key targets. The Zelthari military leadership is overconfident, he reported. They believe their technological superiority makes them unbeatable. They've never fought an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The intelligence reports painted a clear picture. The Zelthari Empire was powerful but complacent. They had ruled through fear and superior technology for 1,000 years, but they had never faced total war. Back on Luna Station, Admiral Kyung-ho reviewed the latest fleet numbers with growing satisfaction. In just 18 months, humanity had built the largest space navy in galactic history. Final count, Commander? He asked. 500,000 warships, sir. Everything from small patrol boats to massive dreadnoughts, plus support vessels, troop transports, and supply ships, the largest military force ever assembled. Kyung-ho nodded slowly. The number was hard to believe. Before Minho's death, Earth's entire space fleet had numbered less than 1,000 ships. Now they had 500 times that many. Each ship carried the same message painted on its hull in every human language. For Minho. The fleet's flagship was the dreadnought Minho's Justice, a massive vessel designed specifically for this war. It carried enough firepower to destroy a planet, and it would serve as Kyung-ho's command ship during the coming campaign. But the ships were only part of the story. The real weapon was humanity itself. Dr. Yoon Seo had been right about human psychology. Other species fought for territory or resources or political advantage. Humans were fighting for something much more dangerous: moral certainty. Every human in the fleet, from the newest recruit to the most experienced admiral, knew exactly why they were going to war. They had all seen the video of Minho's death. They had all watched an 8-year-old boy die for the crime of being human. The Zelthari Empire had made a fatal mistake. They thought killing one human child would intimidate the entire species into submission. Instead, they had united humanity in a way nothing else ever had. As the fleet prepared for departure, messages of support poured in from across human space. Colonists on distant worlds sent supplies and volunteers. Scientists shared their latest weapon designs. Even the pacifist settlements that normally opposed all violence were contributing to the war effort. Everyone understood that this was about more than revenge. It was about establishing humanity's place in the galaxy. It was about making sure no alien species would ever again think they could murder human children without consequences. The Zelthari Empire controlled 12 star systems and commanded 40,000 warships. They had technology that was centuries ahead of human science. They had been the dominant military power in this region of space for a millennium. None of that mattered anymore. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of Minho's Justice and looked out at the greatest fleet ever assembled. 500,000 ships stretched as far as the eye could see, each one crewed by humans who had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. All ships report ready for departure, his communications officer announced. Then let's go teach the Zelthari Empire what happens when you hurt our children, Kyung-ho said quietly. The massive fleet began to move, accelerating toward Zelthari space with grim purpose. They were not going as conquerors seeking glory or riches. They were going as parents seeking justice for a murdered child, and they would not stop until they had it. Dr. So Young's hand shook as she worked at the communications console. The Zelthari ships were moving away from the New Sol, but they hadn't left the area completely. She had maybe 10 minutes before they would jam all transmissions from the human vessel. Captain Hyunwoo stood behind her, watching the scanner displays. "Can you get the message out?" "Working on it, sir," So Young replied, her fingers flying over the controls. She had recorded everything: the Zelthari boarding, the inspection, and most importantly, the murder of Minho. The file was massive, high-definition video with perfect audio. Earth needed to see exactly what had happened. In the common room below, the passengers sat in shocked silence. Minho's body had been moved to the medical bay, where Dr. Park confirmed what everyone already knew. The child was dead, killed by an energy weapon at close range. There was nothing anyone could have done to save him. Yoonji sat beside her son's body, holding his small hand. She had stopped crying, but her eyes were empty, staring at nothing. Dong-soo paced the small medical bay like a caged animal, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "Message away," So Young announced. The transmission burst out from the New Sol at light speed, racing toward Earth through the quantum communication network. In 6 hours, the leadership of humanity would know what had happened in this empty corner of space. The ship continued toward New Busan, but the mood had changed completely. Children stayed close to their parents. Adults spoke in whispers. Everyone kept looking at the door where the Zelthari had entered, as if the aliens might come back at any moment. Security Chief Taiman walked through the passenger areas, trying to keep people calm. But he could see the anger building in their faces. These were peaceful colonists, farmers and teachers and engineers. They had never thought about war or revenge. Now many of them were asking hard questions. "What are we going to do about this?" asked Junho, a middle-aged engineer. "Are we just going to let them get away with murdering a child?" "That's not our decision to make," Taiman replied carefully. "Earth will handle this through proper channels." But even as he said it, Taiman didn't believe his own words. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years. He knew how the galaxy worked. The strong did whatever they wanted to the weak. And justice was just a word in old books. On Earth, President Ji-hoon was in his office reviewing trade agreements when his aide burst through the door. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," the aide said, activating the wall display. The video from the New Sol began to play. President Ji-hoon watched in growing horror as the events unfolded. He saw the Zelthari soldiers board the ship. He saw little Minho get lost in the crowd. He saw the boy approach the alien soldier politely, asking for help finding his mother, and then he saw the murder. The energy blast hit the child in the chest, dropping him instantly. The camera caught every detail: the boy's confused expression, his mother's scream, the alien's cold justification for the killing. "Get me Admiral Subin and General Wu Jin," the president said quietly, "and call an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Now." Within an hour, the video had spread throughout Earth's government. Admiral Subin, the head of Earth's space fleet, watched it 3 times before speaking. "They killed a child," she said simply. "They murdered an 8-year-old boy for accidentally bumping into one of their soldiers." General Wu Jin, commander of the Earth Marines, was less diplomatic. "They need to pay for this. All of them." "We need to be smart about this," President Ji-hoon said. "The Zelthari Empire has thousands of ships. They control a dozen star systems. If we go to war—" "If we don't go to war, they'll think they can do this again," interrupted Dr. Yoon Seo, Earth's top expert on alien psychology. "You have to understand. The Zelthari see this as a teaching moment. They think they've shown humanity our place in the galaxy. If we respond with diplomatic protests and trade sanctions, they'll interpret that as weakness." "Then what do you suggest?" the president asked. Dr. Yoon Seo looked around the room at the assembled military and political leaders. "The Zelthari study other species before they conquer them. They know humans are emotional creatures who form strong family bonds. What they don't understand is what happens when you hurt a human child." "Explain," Admiral Subin said. "Other species in the galaxy are more practical. If the Zelthari killed a vegan child, the vegans would demand compensation. If they killed a Tau child, the Tau would negotiate for better protection agreements. But humans," Dr. Yoon Seo shook her head. "Humans will burn down the galaxy for one dead child." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Are you suggesting total war?" General Wu Jin asked. I'm suggesting that if we don't respond with overwhelming force, the Zelthari will see us as weak prey. They'll keep pushing, keep testing, keep killing our people until we fight back. Better to make our position clear now. President Ji-hoon stared at the frozen image of Min-ho on the wall display. The boy looked so small, so innocent. He was just trying to find his mother. How long would it take to mobilize our full fleet? The president asked. Admiral Subin consulted her tablet. For a limited response? 3 months. For full mobilization? She paused. 18 months, maybe 2 years. We'd have to activate all the shipyards, call up reserves, convert civilian vessels. Do it, the president said quietly. Sir, all of it. Full mobilization. I want every ship we can build, every weapon we can make, every soldier we can train. The Zelthari Empire thinks they can murder human children and walk away. They're about to learn otherwise. The meeting ended with a flurry of orders. Admiral Subin activated Protocol 7, the highest level of military mobilization in Earth's history. General Wu Jin began calling up reserve units and planning for the largest marine deployment ever attempted. But first, there was one more thing to do. President Ji-hoon called an emergency session of the Global Parliament. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every human settlement gathered in Geneva to watch the video from the new Seoul. Assembly Speaker Hai Wan stood at the podium, her face pale but determined. Fellow humans, she began, we gather today to witness an act of murder. Not in war, not in conflict, but in cold blood. A child seeking his mother was killed by an alien who saw him as less than human. The video played on screens throughout the assembly hall. Gasps and cries of outrage echoed from the galleries as representatives watched Min-ho die. The question before us today is simple, Speaker Hae-won continued. Do we accept this? Do we allow the Zelthari Empire to murder our children and call it justice? Or do we stand up and say that human life, every human life, has value? The vote was unanimous. Every representative from every nation and colony voted for war. As the session ended, Admiral Subin was already implementing the mobilization orders. Across human space, shipyards that had been building cargo vessels and passenger liners began retooling for warship production. Military academies expanded their training programs. Civilian industries started converting to military production. And in space, the new Seoul continued its journey to New Busan, carrying 2,000 colonists, who would never forget the day they watched a child die for the crime of being human. The Zelthari Empire had intended to teach humanity a lesson about respect and submission. Instead, they had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They just didn't know it yet. Captain Hyunwoo checked the navigation display one more time as the transport ship New Seoul moved through the empty space between star systems. 2,000 human colonists filled the passenger decks below, all heading to their new home on the planet New Busan. Most were families with children, farmers and engineers ready to start fresh lives on a world where the grass grew blue and the sunsets painted the sky purple. The captain had made this route dozens of times. It was supposed to be safe. The Zelthari Empire controlled this area of space, but they had agreements with Earth. Human ships could pass through as long as they followed the rules and stayed on the approved routes. Down in passenger section C, 8-year-old Min-ho pressed his face against the viewing window. The stars looked different out here, brighter somehow. His mother Yoonji sat nearby, reading a book about farming on New Busan. His father Dong-soo was in the common area playing cards with other passengers. Mom, look at that big red star, Min-ho said, pointing through the thick glass. Yoonji looked up from her book and smiled. That's Alpha Centauri B. Grandpa says it looks even prettier from New Busan. Min-ho was excited to see his grandfather again. The old man had left Earth 3 years ago to start a farming community on New Busan. He sent letters every month describing the strange plants and animals, the way water tasted sweeter there, and how the crops grew faster than anything back home. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Attention passengers, this is Captain Hyunwoo. We are being approached by Zelthari patrol ships for a routine inspection. Please remain calm and stay in your assigned areas. This is normal procedure. But Hyunwoo's voice carried tension that made several passengers look worried. On the bridge, the captain watched as 5 large gray ships moved toward them. The Zelthari vessels looked like metal sharks, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Sir, they're requesting permission to board, said Communications Officer So Young. Granted, Hyunwoo replied. He had no choice. Fighting would mean death for everyone aboard. The lead Zelthari ship was twice the size of the new Sol. It pulled alongside and extended a docking tube. Within minutes, 20 Zelthari soldiers marched onto the human ship. They were tall creatures, nearly 8 feet each, with gray skin and faces that looked like they were carved from stone. Their eyes glowed yellow, and they wore black armor that made them look even more frightening. Admiral Velthak led the group. His armor was fancier than the others, with silver markings that showed his rank. He looked around the human ship with obvious disgust. "This vessel will be searched," Velthak announced in accented English. "All humans will gather in the main passenger area for questioning." Security Chief Taman wanted to protest, but he knew better. The Zelthari had weapons that could turn a person to ash in seconds. He helped guide the passengers to the large common room where they usually ate meals and watched movies. The Zelthari soldiers spread out through the ship, opening cargo containers and scanning everything with handheld devices. They moved like they owned the place, pushing past humans and ignoring questions about what they were looking for. In the common room, 2,000 people crowded together. Children cried and parents held them close. The adults whispered among themselves, wondering what the aliens wanted. Minho got separated from his mother in the crowd. People were moving around trying to find family members, and the boy found himself pushed toward the front of the room. He looked around for Yunji but couldn't see her anywhere. A Zelthari soldier stood near the door, his weapon ready. His name was Kethvar, and he was young for his species, eager to prove himself worthy of the warrior class. He had been taught that other species were inferior, that humans especially were weak and deserving of contempt. Minho walked toward the soldier, not understanding the danger. He was just a child looking for his mother. "Excuse me," Minho said politely. "Have you seen my mom? She has long black hair and she's wearing a blue dress." Kethvar looked down at the small human with rage building in his yellow eyes. In Zelthari culture, a lesser being did not speak to a warrior without permission. It was an insult that demanded immediate response. "You dare address me, inferior creature?" Kethvar snarled. Minho stepped back, confused and frightened. He didn't understand the alien's words, but the tone was clear enough. Still, he was lost and scared. "I just want to find my mom," he said quietly. The boy took another step, and his small shoulder brushed against the Zelthari's armored leg. Physical contact, an unforgivable crime in Kethvar's mind. The soldier raised his energy weapon without hesitation. The other humans in the room saw what was happening and shouted warnings, but it was too late. The blast of energy hit Minho in the chest. The boy fell backward, his small body smoking from the wound. He was dead before he hit the floor. Yunji's scream cut through the sudden silence like a knife. She pushed through the crowd and dropped to her knees beside her son, gathering his lifeless body in her arms. Her sobs filled the room as 2,000 humans stared in shock and horror. Captain Hyunwoo and Security Chief Taman had arrived just in time to see the murder. Taman's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Hyunwoo grabbed his wrist. "No," the captain whispered. "They'll kill everyone." Admiral Velthak entered the room and surveyed the scene without emotion. The dead human child meant nothing to him. The soldier acted correctly, Velthak announced to the crowd. The inferior creature showed disrespect to a Zelthari warrior. This is the consequence. Let this be a lesson to all humans about proper behavior in the presence of your betters. Dongsu pushed through the crowd and fell beside his wife and dead son. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes burned with rage as he looked up at the Zelthari. "He was just a child," Dongsu said, his voice breaking. "He was just looking for his mother." "He was property that failed to show proper respect," Velthak replied coldly. "Be grateful we do not execute you for raising such a poorly trained offspring." The inspection continued for another hour. The Zelthari found nothing suspicious, as expected. They had stopped the ship not for security reasons, but to remind the humans of their place in the galaxy. Before leaving, Admiral Velthak made one final announcement. "Remember this day, humans. Remember that your lives exist only because we allow it. Step out of line again, and the consequences will be severe." The Zelthari soldiers marched off the ship and returned to their vessels. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving the new soul alone with its cargo of grief and rage. In the common room, Yunji still held her son's body. Around her, 2,000 humans stood in stunned silence. They had just witnessed something that would change everything, the aliens thought. They had taught humanity a lesson about fear and submission. They were wrong. They had just lit a fire that would burn across the galaxy.